The Last of Us is my favourite game of all time, without a doubt. But The Last of Us Part 2 is very, very close to overtaking it. Now, I'm not going to say too much about the story of the game in this video. That will come some point in the near future, I'm hoping. Planning to do separate videos on both Ellie and Abby's section of the game, and if those do well, then I'll go back to the very original and do a Joel analysis and all that stuff, because that's cool. But today we're just going to be talking about my completionist experience with The Last of Us Part 2, because it's been one of my favourite games to 100%. If you for some reason don't believe I've 100%ed it, here look, this is the PSN profile trophy thing. No, it says 95%, but that extra 5% is from an update that I am not going to play. I'm not playing through grounded mode, that's fucking terrifying. But don't worry, it still counts as 100%. I've 100% of the base game, just not the DLC. But this game is genuinely a joy to Platinum Trophy. Trophy list is very simple, and I wouldn't say it's too difficult, but I'd say it would take you around 30 hours to achieve the Platinum. A serious amount of collectibles, with there being over 280 different collectibles that you need to find and pick up. These collectibles range from pieces of paper on the floor to state coins. If you are planning to go for the Platinum in this game, I'd recommend staying away from most of the collectibles in your first playthrough. 2 playthroughs are required for the Platinum Trophy anyway, so it's best you just experience the story in the first and worry about collectibles later. What I did was started a New Game Plus and spent a couple of nights with a guide. I'll throw up my recommended one on the screen right here, and just kind of explored the areas on my own first off, and then checked over with the guide to make sure I hadn't missed anything. The collectible pacing in this game can get a bit iffy sometimes. What I mean by that is that in one chapter you could be getting collectibles every minute. In the next there could be up to 10-minute breaks with no collectibles. Aside from the collectibles, the rest of the game and completion is pretty straightforward. Mostly simple stuff like getting all the player upgrades and weapon upgrades, which both require a second playthrough. Aside from that, the rest of the trophy list is honestly quite weak, although I do understand why Naughty Dog have done this. They attempted to make 100% completion a lot more accessible for everyone, and in a lot of ways I see that as a step in the right direction, but in a lot of other ways I see that as kind of straying away from the daunting task of getting 100%. Achieving 100% seems pointless if most people can get it without an issue, right? Moving on from that, let's have a closer look at the trophy list. There's a total of 26 trophies in this game. Only one of them is mandatory story related. You will almost definitely get a few more on your way through your first playthrough though, but don't worry about trophies at all while you're playing through this game, just experience it for what it is. Only when you get to your New Game Plus playthrough should you start worrying about trophies and completion. At least 13 of the remaining 25 trophies will be achieved by finding all of the collectibles, and the rest of them from there are very straightforward, and you'll probably only have a few trophies left after this, as quite a few of them will be earned on your first playthrough. Now we're going to move on to my opinion on the story overall and what I thought about all the different aspects of the game in general. So beware, spoilers coming up. So the main plot point, the death of Joel Miller. This was very controversial even to me when I started playing this. especially with the fact that we're forced to play as Joel's killer afterwards. Although, as much as people hate this decision, this was so fucking smart on Naughty Dog's behalf, and they've done such a good job making us sympathise with what we believe to be the villain. At the start of the game, I hated Abby with everything. I didn't want to give her a single piece of praise at all. I was so fucking angry that she killed one of my favourite characters in gaming history. But then we move on to Seattle Day 3 as Ellie, and we learn of Abby's backstory with Jerry and how Joel murdered him in the Firefly Hospital. And then we have to play all 3 days of Seattle as Abby. And seeing the way that she treated Yara and Lev really reminded me of Ellie and Joel, and I think that's what Naughty Dog were trying to do. The bond between Lev and Abby was my favourite relationship in the entire game, and the fact that they managed to do that with a character who I previously hated with everything is fucking incredible. If you closely examine the scenes between those two, you can see shit tons of parallels between the first game with Ellie and Joel, and it genuinely blows my mind to see how much detail was put in that I didn't even notice the first time around. Now I'm going to talk about the things I don't like in the story, which there isn't much of, but there are a few little gripes that I have that make it slightly worse than the first game in my opinion. One of these things is the fact that Joel just said his name to a bunch of random people with guns. Like, since when has Joel been that fucking stupid? Many people try to explain this by saying like, oh, he was living in Jackson for what, like 5 years, that softened him up. But I don't think living in a town for 5 years would get rid of 20 plus years of survival instincts. If it was Tommy and Joel from the first game, they'd have followed Abby back, killed her, and killed everyone else in there, and just sat there and waited for the infected to die out. And they'd have, waited for the snowstorm to stop, or whatever they were waiting for. They wouldn't have just been like, hey, yeah, my name's Joel, where's Tommy? Yeah, we're gonna get shot now, because we're fucking stupid. Tommy and Joel, in a sense, were massive pricks. They would kill anyone in their way. They did not give a shit unless they had a strong bond with whoever they were trying to save. They would not save your ass just because you needed saving. They could not give less of a fuck about you. But in this one, they're just like, oh yeah, let's save this random girl and let her take us back to her friends who are very clearly setting up an ambush. That's the one part of the story that I think makes no fucking sense. And if anyone can figure out a decent explanation as to why Tommy and Joel were so open towards Abby, I'd like you to give me that, please. Please tell me, because it's been confusing me for so fucking long. As for the rest of the story, I'm gonna do 2 separate videos. I'm gonna do one for Ellie, and I'm gonna go very in depth about her character and motivations. And I'm going to do another for Abby and go into depth about her character, her motivations. And I may do a analysis on Joel eventually, if those 2 videos do well. And I might end up doing one for smaller characters like Tommy or Dina or maybe even Tess, Bill, anyone like that from the first games or anything. I'll try, but yeah. Unfortunately, that's going to be it for this video. I'm sorry I was gone for so long. I've been really caught up with things in my life. Obviously, I'm young, so I'm out doing stuff, living my life. I can't really sit down and make YouTube videos that much of the time, but we will be getting a lot more gameplay videos and stuff with my friends soon. So hopefully, you shouldn't have to wait too long for stuff like that. Thank you, and goodbye.